Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have construction needs? Maybe you want to build a pergola. Maybe you've been trying to get the kitchen done. Check out K&H Construction. Chris Helms, he's a local guy from Waxahachie. He'll help you out. Let him know DV LeBron sent you. K&H Construction. Today, my very special guest is Mr. G. Michael Hopf, a Marine, an author, an all-around man with a legacy. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, man. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor for me. As I've talked to you offline, I love when my brothers and sisters have these stories. There's nothing better than being able to talk about that. And you have taken it to another level because you have written so many books. You're an award-winning author. You've gotten the story out. But before we get into all those books, I want you to give a brief bio and we'll go from there.
I'm just a kid who grew up in Maryland. I grew up on a farm, not a really working farm, really good parents. I had a really great childhood. I don't have that story to fall back on where some other people struggled in those formative years. And I really wanted to seek adventure. And I thought that was going to be in the United States Marine Corps. I wanted to be the tip of the spear on expeditionary force. And I was right. It was a hell of an adventure. So I enlisted. I was a knucklehead, as my dad said, because I enlisted for 6 years. Like the initial contract was 6. He goes, "What are you doing?" Because my dad was a Marine. You know what it's like when you're like 18. You think you know everything. And so I enlisted in infantry, which is another kind of, I had really good grades. I could have done anything, but I thought infantry was the place where I should be to have the ultimate experience that the Marine Corps could give me. And so I did. I got infantry. I was an anti-tank gunner, and I did 3 deployments when I was in. I ended up getting out as a sergeant in E5. But the whole experience I had was amazing. I always like to look at the experience. There were some uncomfortable times. There were some really shitty times. I always like to focus on the positive, and I reframed the negative to that they were opportunities where I learned and I grew from them. And overall, I can't say anything but wonderful things about the military, about the United States military, about my time in the Marine Corps. To me, it was a great opportunity, and I'm grateful to my country that I got to serve.
I am too, and I'm grateful that you did serve. I love my Marine brothers and sisters, and my dad was a Marine, so I got nothing but love for you guys.
Love goes back to you too, man.
Thanks,
Like
brother.
we have that same love for the Navy and for all the care that you guys take. And listen, we couldn't do what we do if we didn't have you. And so it's like it's symbiotic relationship, and we're all in it together. We're
It's
all in
def
it together, man.
it's definitely like a crazy family because we'll go at each other, but anybody else comes at us, and we're like, "Hey, easy." So I love that relationship. But talk to me about that transition because you said you focused on the positive. None of us leave without some kind of wounds. None of us, especially
Yeah.
after September 11, even before there was things that were happening. So nobody leaves without some kind of scars, whether they're inside or outside. So talk to me about that transition.
Yeah, I think when I've been asked before about this, and like people go, you must have had a really successful transition. I tend to look at I don't believe in regrets, but I look back on my years after, and I think I had a successful transition. Doesn't mean there weren't bumpy roads. There's definitely, there's actually, it's not crazy to say that I don't think about the Marine Corps every day in some way. It's odd because it's a very powerful time in our lives when we're in the military. I think my success in transitioning is that I left the Marine Corps and I went to become a commercial diver. That's like underwater construction work. And commercial diving school, everyone in the school is military, sailors, airmen, soldiers, Marines, Coast Guard. It's like every person that knew how to speak my language was there. So I left this fraternity, and then I was with the same people, and we all spoke the same language. There's a language, you know what I'm talking about. We spoke the same language. We're the same people, right? Even though we come from various walks of life, we join the military for kind of our own individual reasons. But when we're there, we have a greater common purpose that's what binds us together, is that common purpose. And so I'm there for 2.5 years as a commercial diver. I get out of that, and then I go and become an executive protection agent. I was a bodyguard, same place, same people, speak my language, former military, law enforcement, again, the same people. So I'm there for over 10 years. So you look at it, I got 12, 13 plus years that I'm hanging with, working with closely, people that speak my language and get me. And so I was able to, I think, slowly integrate back into civilian life because I was with my brothers still. And I think that's important. I think some of the struggle can come with not just people seeing that they have experiences of things, right? But then I've always been fascinated. This is in my books. I'm fascinated by people's reactions to events. And you can have one event and two people, but they come away from it. They see it differently. It can affect them differently. So what is that? You got people in combat and they see things, but yet one person has struggles with it and the other doesn't. And so what is that common denominator? I can't say that I know, so I'm not an expert on it. I can just tell you just my thoughts, my opinions. And I think it comes down to first thing is identity. When we're we have this, we're doing things we're historical. We're on this world stage, whether it's like on a Westpac, we're sailing around the world. We're doing things that are bigger than life. We're being given tasks of huge responsibility for us when we're young men, huge. We're leading men and women. We're in charge of things. We're in charge of weaponry or equipment that costs billions of dollars, or we're in charge of men we're making decisions that it's like literal life and death. And so you get this, like all this responsibilities put on the shoulders of us when we're young. Then we have that brotherhood, that camaraderie, so to speak, that fraternity. And then it's that grander purpose. And so then you leave and you go back to some town somewhere. The people don't speak your language. You've lost that kind of connection with the identity and the culture of this grand purpose that you had before. And you're just, so I think that can really, and then if you've had some experiences, again, if you don't have an outlet to talk, I know you and I were talking before, like what you're doing, helping veterans is amazing. And that's what they need. They need sometimes to talk to a brother or a sister that have been there, done that. And that's that thing that they need, that bind, that kind of glue that binds us, right? Because again, you speak their language. And I think that could be part of it. Again, I'm not going to profess that I know it, but I think that's part of it. We lose that identity of this very powerful identity, and we go back to doing whatever. And I don't know, that's just my thoughts on it.
No, it's amazing like that, because we did such, like you said, we did such crazy stuff, such like things that people will never do in their entire life. We've seen a sunrise out in the South Pacific that just, it was colors that it's 30 years later and you can't describe these colors of beauty that you've seen out in the ocean, along with other things out in the ocean that you're just like, it is an experience and an identity, like you said, and that brotherhood and with sisterhood, and just that thing. And you notice that when you're in there, it doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter, your background. It doesn't matter whether you were poor, rich, none of that. You guys are all hanging out, and it's actually looks like a joke. You go out on the town in Singapore, and you got an Asian guy, a Puerto Rican, an Irish dude, and they're all together black dude, they're all together just having a good old time. That kind of stuff doesn't translate, unfortunately, to our world. So we get out and we're like, what? You want me to do what? Or you want me to see it how? I love those dudes, and I didn't care what color they were. I didn't care what they were. None of that.
100% agree. 100% agree. And there's this perspective. When I talk to young men and women and they're not quite sure what they want to do, and I was like, join the military. And there's this perspective they're going to get if they go into it with open eyes, with an open mind. Like I remember when I was in the Gulf War, and Derek Wilson, I still remember, he was in my squad. And we had just been told some information. We're like, oh, this is going to be pretty interesting. And we were sitting there looking at each other. Is this him and I? He's a black guy from South Carolina. But he and I, in the 9 months we were sitting in the sandbox, he and I had gotten to know each other, like in a way that we were telling each other stuff that we hadn't told other people. And it was just, he was telling, and I was getting a perspective, like growing up, how I did. And he was telling me how he grew up and some of the racism he would deal with. So I was getting this very interesting and open perspective that I wouldn't have gotten probably before. Now I'm having to be with him, and we're having we trusted each other. We cared for each other and we protected each other. And it's because, again, it's that common purpose. We all have individual reasons, but now you've got something bigger. And then when you're on the battlefield, then that purpose is actually now to the guy next to you. And that's like, I know that's this answer you hear a lot, but it's true. You're looking, because you're brothers. You're like, I got to take care of you. And it transcends, I don't care where you came from, the color of your skin, any of that. It transcends all that. I think the military is such an incredibly binding environment for young men and women. I really do. I think highly of it.
It's such a powerful experience, and I don't regret it at all. Some things left scars, but I still don't regret it. And I lost people. The worst is losing people who couldn't handle. They just couldn't carry that load when they got home. So they survived Iraq, they survived first Gulf War, but they couldn't survive the war at home. They just couldn't do it. And then they were gone. And those are probably the ones that hurt the most. And then the other dudes who were exposed to stuff. I had a brother of mine die about 2 years ago, Army dog. He got some aggressive, weird cancer out in the box, and he was exposed to a bunch of chemical, the burn pits in Afghanistan and stuff. Got a fast-moving cancer out of nowhere, 44 years old or something, and gone. Yeah. It's just, those are horrible. But
we all have those stories. I have this too. I had a guy I work with. He was in the Army. And then one day I get a call, like, Lawrence shot himself. I'm like, what? And it goes back to when he was in. I don't understand it. Like, he was an old Army dog. And I like, really? I wish I knew what that was. And I wish there were more resources. I know there are resources out there, but sometimes people are just resistant to it and they don't want to seek it. Their pride sometimes get in the way. I have to get on Marines about that. Don't be so damn prideful sometimes. We need help. Pick up the phone, call. There are people that are out there that genuinely care about you and they want to take care of you. And the world is a smaller place without you. So you need to stay in this. Pick up the phone and call somebody. Trust me, you're not alone.
No, you're not alone. Pick up a phone, talk to somebody, reach out. It's everything that you are or ever were ends if you end your life. And there's so many things that you could have been, and you're a man of honor, man or woman of honor. You deserve to live. You're wonderful, wonderful, beautifully created.
The world does need you. People need you. Yeah, completely agree.
I always say, and this, I'll move on right now, but I always say that find your way to get through it. For me, it was God. If it's working out for you, if it's talking, if it's counseling, I don't care. Get through it, folks. God saved me, but that might not be for you. I don't care. Please choose life. Just choose life. Now, you call yourself just a guy stringing words, is what you said. You've had a life that kind of resembles that Most Interesting Man in the World commercial. I think we can put you on those. I mean,
I get carried away now.
That's kind of where, when I read up on what you've done. So how did all of that translate to writing books? How did that come about?
I've always been a big reader, and I was a big reader in high school. And then when in the Marine Corps, I was just consuming books. When you're on deployment a lot, you're on ships, sitting in the berthing and reading, lots of reading, right? Outside, I playing cards, but spades. That's the game, right? Everyone plays spades. Spades. And so outside, so I've consumed a lot of books. I was reading. I've always been a big reader. And then I did write here and there, took journals and stuff like that, wrote some stories here and there, everything. And then it wasn't until I'd actually written a children's book, a children's illustrated book for my kids, and had the idea, put the time together, got the resources, blah, blah, blah. I got it. And so I ended up having it in my hands. I was like 40. How old was I? 40 years old. And I did that. And all I know is I remember I was sitting there telling my wife, it's like, wow, so this was an idea. And then now I've got this in my hand as the book. And I was like, what if I decided to write a novel? And so that's what I did. I set about to doing it. And then that was 18 months later, I had my first novel. Wow. But I just I just made that determination that, okay, so this was, again, the children's book was this idea. And I put discipline and intention and consistency behind that effort. And I got it. Next thing I had it in my hand, it's something manifested was there. So I did the same thing with the novel. I committed to it. And 18 months later, I had the rough draft done. I had an agent, fired the agent. That's another story in itself. And then hit self-publish on it. And when was that? April 5th of 2013. And then 10 days later, the book took off. And it didn't stop.
Now, do you plot these things? Do you have the whole storyline in your head when you start writing these, or has it been something like as you went along, you drifted in these characters? What is your writing style?
That's a great question. So it's a mix of both. I'm not the biggest person that believes in like formal outlines. I think an outline, if it's too detailed and too formalized, can actually hamstring an author. Because I'll dive into this a little bit, not too wonky on it, but I'll get into a little more detail what that means. It's like when you do a full-fledged outline, which I do recommend for like nonfiction books. Say if you're doing a technical manual, then outlines make sense. But if you're doing a novel, when you're doing an outline, it's like left brain, right brain stuff. It's more you're thinking technically when you're doing an outline. And then when you actually get down to start writing the narrative, it in my head, it plays like a movie. And so I'm just writing that. And as I'm writing, you get into a flow state. I call it tapping into the ether, and it comes in and it just flows and flows. And there'll be moments when I'm writing in this flow state that things just come to me that wouldn't have come to me before. And they wouldn't have come if I did an outline. They come when you get into that flow state. And this is why I have a general idea. To answer your question, I have a general idea about how I want the story to go, how I want it to begin, the general story arc that I want for it. And then I also have a general idea how I want it to end. But I don't flesh out everything with an outline. I let that kind of organic writing take place. I just start writing and I just watching in my head, and it just goes, and literally characters will come. I was like, that's a great idea. That's a cool scene. I think I'll do that. And I let that go. And if anyone's ever done an outline, I would say if you get to that point in the story when you're writing and your organic writing is taking you a direction that's opposite your outline, ditch the outline. Because what you're writing in that moment in time, when you're in flow, is the right story. Stick to that. 100% stick to that, because that is the direction you're supposed to go.
I love that, because with the show, I'll have an outline of stuff as I read through, but as I'm going through the show, I try to flow with whatever my guest, because the show is about my guest. And I love to flow where my guest is going with things. And I love that you do that with the books. Now, we all seem to there's a sense in people that there's an ending coming, and not everybody, but that there may be an ending, and that with things like The Walking Dead and different stuff like that. So you had a New World series that it's pretty intense, end of the world kind of thing. Can you talk about that? What led you to that kind of theme? Is it what I was saying earlier, or you just like that genre?
I've always liked the genre. I like the end of the world genre. Just fascinated by the what ifs. If this happens, whatever this event happens, what does it look like, right? What is the world going to look like if that happens? And I've also been fascinated, like I mentioned, just how humans, like the human condition and how people respond to things. Been fascinated by it. So for instance, I'll say this, an apocalyptic event is only an apocalyptic event if everyone doesn't coordinate together. So imagine the grid collapses. If everyone got together and said, let's work on this, we'll fix this together, we'll work as one big team and we'll get it fixed and the lights will turn back on. There's no apocalypse then. The apocalypse, what we know, tends to be violence, right? It tends to be lots of violence and bloodshed and chaos and a collapse. That is because there's a certain percentage of the population that react to it in a negative manner. And they panic. And the panic sets in because they know deep in their heart they're not prepared. That's where panic comes from. So if the lights were to go off for an extended period of time, the people that panic and turn to the streets and riot and steal and murder, those are the people, they don't have the resources and they don't even know how to get them except to steal them from somebody else, or because they just don't know how to survive an event like that. And so that's all it is. It's an apocalyptic event is a changing and an end of an environment, but it happens because people just don't work together. And there's a segment that works against the other. And again, that entails violence and bloodletting and things like that. And I've allowed my books to also be messengers to try to teach lessons. And what that is, and not in a way that's too smacking in your face, but fiction is a great tool, by the way, to send a message. Absolutely. It's very powerful. I think most people overlook it. Like, I'm just going to read a self-help book or a nonfiction book. I'm like, well, and I know there's a lot of prominent authors out there, like Lee Child. I was just on another podcast, and Lee had been on there, and he was asking. He has the same opinion I had. Lee Child is Reacher. You ever seen the Jack Reacher stuff?
Of course.
Yeah. So Lee had He has the same opinion as me, And that is the best way to deliver a message is through fiction, because you as the reader will make an emotional connection with that character. You're now invested. And so now you're trying to see your eyes through that character. So whatever that character's dealing with or the situations, you're taking it emotionally to heart. And then you have this like brain heart coherence. You're thinking, oh my gosh, that person wasn't prepared. Look what happened to them. And then you start thinking of your own life, like, am I prepared? Maybe I'm not prepared. I don't want to be like that character. Let me make sure I don't have that. You'd be amazed at how many people have reached out to me over the years, thousands of people over the years since I wrote the New World series that says, I'm not prepared. Your stories, your books made me look at myself and realize I wasn't ready to protect my family in case something happened. And so they decided to become prepared. And that's only because I just delivered a fictional tale about a collapse because the grid collapses.
Yeah. No, fiction is being used a lot to have messages, and you see that. Just open up Netflix, you see it. I'm not opining on the message. What I'm saying is that there is a message that comes out in all these different fictions. But have you ever been surprised by where a character started and where it ended in your series when you're writing? Has one of your characters surprised you on?
Yeah.
I know you're making that character, but just where they started and where they ended.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. 100%. And this, because this comes down to the organic writing. So I've had an idea and like so I don't want to give too much of a spoiler for my main series, but I've always had this idea in the first few books where I wanted the main character, how I wanted it to end. Because eventually you got to wrap it up. Eventually you just got to, okay. And I changed halfway through the series to what I wanted to do with him. And it's profound. And that just came from organically writing it. And how the character was, it's how he needed to end it. It was like, it was doing him a service. And the same, there was a character that I ended up writing an entire spin-off series because of this one character named Lexi. So I'm talking about just creating an organic writing. I was writing and it was like the second book in the series. And I was like, for this scene, I need another character. I'm going to create another character. Okay, I'm going to make her female. And she's going to be really sexy. Okay, got it. And this is me as my brain's working. I'm writing. I was like, oh, great. I'm writing. This is perfect. And then as a writer, I was like, I really like her. She's really quick-witted. She's smart, sexy, all these elements. I like this character. It really just came out of my head like I needed one for the scene. And she was intended to be like a throwaway. Like as far as she comes in to disrupt the scene and then she's gone, right? But no, I'm keeping her. And I kept her, and then fans loved her. And then I was like, I'm doing an entire like series just on her. I'm going to go back to her origin story and then follow along what's happening with her then when she's no longer part of the main series, just because the fans loved her. And she was a character that was written, no outline, just came along during the organic writing process. It originally created as a throwaway, then turned it, now she has her own series.
You have so much fun. I could tell that you have so much fun in developing these personalities and these characters. It's a little beyond my scope, but I love it. I love that you're able to do that. Now, these stories of resilience and grit, obviously those are things where we had to do it in the service, improvise and execute and doing those things. Tell me how that has influenced you, your time in the Marines, and how is that playing out on that? Is that the resilience parts, getting through these difficult things, is that what you're pulling out of it?
Yeah. One thing the Marine Corps definitely told me is do everything with purpose. Even if you're walking across the parking lot, like you just do things with purpose. Get in your car and walk in the grocery. I'm on a mission. I'm just moving in. And I get very committed when I want to start a project. I definitely get really committed. I visualize what I want to see. I visualize not just a story, but just anything. Now that I'm serial entrepreneur, I've got other businesses. I'm doing a bunch of other stuff that are adjacent businesses to writing now. And I just really set upon using that discipline. I think that's what I was saying before. That's how I got to write the first book. And I just applied discipline and consistency. And I just rinse and repeat. I get up, I literally blocked out a time. I was like, writing this book is like a part-time job. I'm going to, just like what you're doing with this podcast, right? It's like, and it takes discipline and it takes consistency. That's the only way you're going to do it. And you do that enough. Now you've got over a year, you've got how many podcasts or how many words written or how many books or whether it's with fitness, the same thing with fitness, discipline, consistency, go to the gym every day. You do it over a period of time. You're going to see results over time. And I learned that in the Marine Corps. It's like discipline is very important. The military teaches that. But then I layer that in with consistency. You do something on a daily basis, you build up. It's like compounding interest. And like anything, you just compound the interest on, you compound the labor, you compound whatever that is. And yeah, the Marine Corps taught me that, doing it with purpose and then having discipline.
What if the world really did end? What is that lesson you would like people to take from your books?
Just to be prepared. Because there have been events we've all lived through now. COVID, when it first came, a lot of us, I mean, we can look back now, some people in hindsight's 2020, but when it first occurred, it was a very disrupting event and it was global. Who would ever thought we'd be seeing schools shut down for a year or kids not? It was chaotic to say the least. Supply, it could have been worse, but it is what it was, right? And so the main thing I like to focus on and I like to drive home is people should be prepared. And that preparedness is simply just having an insurance policy. And it's serious. Like we have insurance for cars, life, health, you name it. We have insurance for umbrella insurance, Arizona emission insurance, you name it. We all have insurance policies. And that all this preparedness is. And I have this thing that I created years ago called the 4 pillars of survival. And it was born out of writing all this apocalyptic fiction. And the first one for survival is you have to have resources. Resources are your basic resources: food, water, equipment, tools, firearms. There's just a tool. Like all these things are resources you can have. Skill sets is another pillar. Skill set is knowing how to do something that's going to keep you alive, whether that's like how to harvest food, how to grow food, how to harvest animals. And maybe you learn more kind of advanced medical stuff so you can help out and take care of just having knowledge. That's what a skill set is. Having knowledge, it's a value, it's a commodity you can bring to somebody and say, listen, I know how to do this. Oh, great. Now you add value to the situation. The third thing is a mindset. Have the mindset to survive. That comes down to what we learned in the military. It's a mindset. Like when something happens, I'm going to address it. I'm going to work on it. It could be dangerous, but I'm here. It's fine. It is what it is. So you have to have a very positive and driven mindset. And the fourth thing is fitness. I think fitness gets overlooked a lot for preparedness. And that is, you never know. And you have to have, I'm not saying you have to have a 6-pack of abs. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, are you physically capable to handle yourself in a situation? It's very simple. It's just a level of physicality. Because you look at an end of the world type situation, can you physically handle yourself? And can you put a pack on if you have to do that again back in the old days and you have to hump 10 miles? Are you physically capable of doing that? Now, some people I know have some other physical ailments, but can you work around them? What can you do to adjust for that? And so not everyone's situation is similar. And so if you have something that's more unique, think about how you can overcome that, right? And work on that. But physicality, I think, is very important. So those are my 4 pillars. Preparedness is I think it's really big. And by the way, when you're prepared, you will have peace of mind if something happens. If something happens, you just go, I feel good. I got my stuff. I got my mindset. I got some skills. I feel good physically. I'm going to close the door and let the world go crazy because I'm good. I'm protecting my family. I think nothing gives better peace of mind than that.
If your plan involves the government saving you on something like that, you're in trouble.
100%. It's self-reliance. You have to rely on yourself.
You have to watch for yourself.
Yeah.
I could speak to you all night, but unfortunately, I'm coming to the end, my friend. But I wanted you to go ahead and just tell people about what books you got coming and give you the last word.
People can find all my books at Amazon.com. Clearly, some are also sitting on shelves in Barnes & Noble that I have with like major publishers. And people can visit my website at gmichaelhopf.com. That's where you get all my books. They can reach out to me and contact me. And my latest book I wrote, I did it in January. I released it January 2023. It's a standalone novel called Cries of a Dying World. In a nutshell, what happens if everyone in the world finds out they have 2 weeks left to live because an asteroid's coming. But really, it's a story that follows how people are struggling with that news. It's a great novel. Pick it up. Any new projects, I've been primarily focusing on my publishing company and this other company I have. But yeah, so gmichaelhoff.com, all my books are there.
Man, it's really cool when you get to say that the things that you do in one way, shape, or form going to shape the world and outlive you. And that is something that you're doing by putting your words in print. For generations and generations, they'll be able to look back to the words that you put on paper. It's a powerful thought when you really think about that. And it all started when, you went like this.
Yeah,
I support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and it's been one hell of a ride for you, Mike. I am so glad that you came on, my friend. Can you stick around after the show real quick?
absolutely. And by the way, thank you very much. And the same goes for you. What you're doing is creating legacy. That's great. You're a creator. You're reaching out. You're sharing other people's stories. It's something to be very proud of.
Thank you, my friend.